project was realized within the framework of a double degree master program, as a cooperation between the Vienna University of Technology in Vienna and the Tongji University in Shanghai. This work is divided in two parts, a theoretical part and a design development, and its scope is the reuse and reintegration of the Warrow Jail, an historical archipelago within the city of Shanghai. Between 1939 and 1940, around 20,000 Jews arrived to Shanghai seeking asylum. Either by ship or train, the journey was long, but since the rest of the world closed their doors, Shanghai was almost the only visible option to live free. The life of the immigrants changed drastically after 1943. In a Shanghai, under the Japanese control and German pressure, the refugees were considered as stateless. In this order, a ghetto was created in the area of Tilanqiao, a workers' neighborhood near the Huangpu River. The restricted area covered around 2.5 square kilometers, containing therefore an overpopulation in a precarious situation. But the force and desire to live of the stateless Jews drove them to build its streets with an European flair. The area was then known as Little Vienna. In this area is also located the Warrow Jail, known as the Alcatraz of Orient in the 19th, a massive structure located in the middle of the urban life, which is still in function nowadays. It was suggested that its prison's function should be relocated, considering that the people living next to it express often their discomfort and how living nearby affected their daily life. But some historians had the fear that the closure of the Warrow Jail could destroy a chapter of Shanghai's history. It is known that sooner or later, developing processes will take over the jail, but this should be seen as an opportunity of reconciliation between Shanghai and its historical buildings. An analysis of the urban context in the area of the Warrow Jail highlights the position and relation of the site towards the city. In terms of connectivity and public transport infrastructure, it is well integrated into Shanghai's system, making the area reachable what doesn't mean that it is frequently visited. The streets next to the Warrow Jail are livable streets where pedestrians are visible even though the infrastructure of the sidewalks may not be the best. Obstacles on the streets, mainly daily use items as bicycles, scooters, clothes, chairs, are present. With many street side oriented facades, the zone is livable and inhomogeneous, revealing that the streets and the built environment remain in a strong coexistence. This relationship offers an urban image where the daily life of the inhabitants could be perceived, making the district very unique. The block's size is revealing the history and development of the city, creating different urban forms. In the area, the residential use is present in different typologies, even though the inhabitants live in very, very small spaces and are forced to build improvised rooms as for cooking or store. Also, in order to achieve some sort of economic development, a mixed working living use is very predominant in the area, creating an almost monotonous function layer. As the history of the area was marked by industrialization and high density populations as refugees or workers living there, the space for green areas was very limited or almost inexistent, and nowadays the panorama is not much different. The low rise pattern endorses the historic appearance, with a predominant height in the zone from 3 to 15 meters, because of its history as a workers' neighborhood, giving the area a distinctive character and shaping the community. According to historical maps comparison, Tilanqiao has not been subject of demolition more than some small parts in order to improve the street network. And since the area was declared an historic area, the probability of some drastic demolitions is lower. But as represented in the graphic, this is not the case in the surroundings. On the west, entire blocks, most of them containing traditional structures, have been demolished. Prisons may constitute one of the most violent forms of architecture. It is one of those less spaces where users cannot decide if they stay or not, and most of the time their interaction with the built environment is highly restricted and controlled. Therefore, to break with the terror meaning of its use on architecture in order to heal a society may be considered as a hard goal to reach. Problem identification. The Warrow Jail is presented as a cultural good, but nowadays the only interaction that the visitors may have with the buildings is just visual. The strong impermeability around the complex, which is endured by its massiveness and its authority character with elements like CCTV or barbed wire, makes of it a place to contemplate and not a place to experience. For obvious reasons, is the use of the Warrow jail which prevents any interaction between the complex and outside users. Also, how we imagine prisons has nothing to do with how we imagine the spaces where we want to live and coexist. Warrow jail may be interpreted as a barrier, not only enclosing almost the whole block and avoiding any public alley system inside of it, but also making the sidewalk on its surroundings not appropriate and monotonous, which generates an unpleasant experience for the pedestrians. Inside the complex, the lack of space is evident, resulting by the needs for expansion of the prison, which led to the construction of different buildings in the spots available. With a privileged position in an historic district which is attracting the attention of Shanghai and not far away from promising development projects, the Warrow Jail has remained as an undeveloped island inside the city, and therefore its historical value and potentials are not being used. With narrow spaces optimized for activities as monitoring, the imprisonment typology is difficult to adapt to other purposes in which the well being and quality of life are some of the main purposes. Solutions and potential. The organization of the structures that confronts the complex is a key point in the architectural and spatial concept. New forms should be introduced, but also the interaction between the buildings and their surroundings are to be rethink in order to create new spatial situations, with qualities that will help to make the complex more attractive. A place with such a cultural value should be readable as a unity and give the impression of integrity to endure its presence. In order to improve the social sustainability of the community, the function layer of the Warrow Jail should break the monofunction and be conceived into a mixed use, which offer different possibilities for the existing population in the area, visitors and new inhabitants. The mixed-use purpose will shape a social urban fabric where interaction and integration are motivated, evoking memories from the past but also constructing memories for the future. Free spaces are to be opened by reconsidering which buildings should be removed. These spaces should have qualities that will encourage the desire of the people to stay and enjoy them. Prisons are built to last. This is evident in the inherent architectural features of the prison typology. Therefore, the cells block typology is to be studied in order to find different options in which they can be adapted to new uses, trying to keep some of their essence and at the same time giving them a new life. New access points to the area are to be introduced in order to create a permeability which will allow a better connection with its surroundings. Inside the complex, the movement patterns are to be changed in order to create stronger connections between the buildings and the open spaces. Even though, as defined before, prisons are architectural forms of terror. In the case of the Warrow Jail, it has also an incredible historic value. For this reason, its past is not to be forgotten, but its future is to be rewritten, being an opportunity for the community to reinvent themselves. From the current situation, the creation of new access and the liberation of space by the demolition of specific buildings offer a new way to experience and connect the area. The definition of the access allows a new distribution and division of the existing and the creation of new spatial qualities. By cutting the existing structures, the access not only redivide the outdoor areas, but also the indoor spaces, creating an intersection between the old and the new. The axes are materialized by four different structures that create variable levels of permeability: sitting, framing, connecting, and interacting. Combined together, the different structures offer changing spatial and visual sequences. The axes build a shelter for the visitors, and at the same time, they serve the courtyards. The prison typology is by definition not permeable to the city, and its buildings are all designed to work in pro of the prison function, ignoring the community of the area. The mix of uses which ensures that the complex will be the meeting point of a colorful group of users endures its identity, creating a multifaceted character which at the same time will shape the sense of community. Because of its use, the tailored floor plans from the prison are not available. Therefore, its current typology have been reconstructed from narration of former inmates. The two lines of cells are located back to back on the center of the block, with an area of 3.2 square meters each cell. This structure was thought in order to avoid any communication between the inmates, reduce their space to the minimum to allocate more people in less space, and to optimize the monitoring work. The new distribution for the plan is at the same time respecting the existing structure while liberating himself from the restricted arrangement of the prison cells. From the modification of the existing plans, four main new typologies are created in order to respond to the new functions. The different functions are arranged in order to react to the surroundings inside and outside the complex. The main axes are accentuated by a system of plazas to generate social urban spaces. They are also activated by livable functions as commerce and working. The living cluster and hotel are oriented to the neighborhood in its most residential part, allowing a direct contact with the daily Chinese life. Cultural functions are oriented to the existing Jewish museum, forming a culture complex. The surrounding wall, as a characteristic element of the complex and as a primordial point of contact between the Warrow jail and its surroundings, will not be demolished, since it may imply the forgetfulness of its history. Therefore, the decision to open it is motivated by the discourse of release that social action means. The improvements in the permeability of the complex and the integration of it with the surroundings are conceived as an act of reconciliation and negotiation between historic and modern architecture, giving back to the community a piece of land which was kept as an unreachable archipelago. Its improved spatial organization will achieve a variety of atmospheres, breaking with the homogeneity present, and resulting in a more human led composition in which interaction, encounter, and creation are a constant. The reuse of the Warrow Jail is a liberating act for a society which has been trapped between the past and the present, with the conception that it was their past which condemned them to not follow the pace of evolution present in the rest of the city, blinding the idea that is there in their history where their potential and value relies. Instead of seeing the historic areas as an obstacle and relating them to underdevelopment, modern cities have to consider social areas as contributors of evolution and growth that endure the identity of their inhabitants and as essential parts of their functionality. In order to create a place that not only shows the past but connects it with the present and ensure its permanence in the future, Warrow Jail is presented as a stage in which public memory can be created and conserved, contributing to a society in which development has to be promoted, but at the same time preserving the nostalgic about the history present in its streets. In architectural terms, this is highlighted by keeping the forms from the past and at the same time allowing the introduction of new elements, creating an scenario where both remembrance and development can coexist and complement each other. Remember the community not only who they were, but enduring who they are and improving who they are going to be.